After yet another poor playoff performance, we settle the debate of Dwyane Wade versus James Harden for good on today's episode of Locked On Heat.
You are Locked On Heat, your daily Miami Heat podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
All right, welcome to Locked On Heat, your daily podcast on the Miami Heat, whether you're tuning in on YouTube or on your favorite podcast app. Thanks for making Locked On Heat your first listen every day. I'm Wes Goldberg here with David Ramil. Both of us are credentialed Heat media members who cover this team every day. For daily content on the Heat, click that subscribe button on YouTube. Make sure you are following us on your podcast app. This is a bonus show for you today. If you missed today's full episode, we had our Miami Heat offseason primer where we talked through everything that you need to know about the offseason and how the Heat can acquire a star, plus a bunch of other things. That is up on YouTube and in your podcast feed. But right now, we are talking Dwyane Wade versus James Harden. And David, I think we can settle this debate for good after this weekend. In my opinion, it's the silliest. It's one of the silliest debates we have in basketball. Dwyane Wade versus James Harden. We'll talk about it all the way through. But on Saturday night, David, I'm watching basketball. I'm at the beach with my wife. We take a little vacation after the Miami Heat season is over and after exit interviews and stuff like that. And all of a sudden I see on Twitter, Dwyane Wade is trending. I'm like, that's a little weird. Why is Dwyane Wade trending? And by the way, this was before his surprise cameo on Saturday Night Live. So I knew right away why he was randomly trending. Because this happens whenever James Harden has a lousy playoff game. Because it always ends up getting this debate sparked online again, Dwyane Wade versus James Harden. And there's a bunch of stuff we can get into here, but the reason it got sparked on Saturday night, it was another Harden playoff stinker. 7 points on 2 of 8 shooting. He was a minus 29 in 35 minutes in the Clippers' Game 7 loss to the Nuggets. They lost that game for a lot of reasons. James Harden might have been reason number one. It wasn't a great Kawhi game. I thought Ty Lue got outcoached in that series, but Harden, 7 points on 8 shots, a minus 29 in 35 minutes in a game where did anybody tell him it was a Game 7? Because it didn't look like he was approaching it, or the entire Clippers team was approaching it like a Game 7. But his stinker really stands out like a real big turd and a pretty lousy punch bowl. And these are just the things that Dwyane Wade never did. I'm not saying he never had bad playoff games, but he always rose to the occasion. And maybe he didn't shoot well, but he tried hard. You never doubted Dwyane Wade's intensity. You never doubted Dwyane Wade's 1-2. Nobody ever had to tell Dwyane Wade, by the way, this is a Game 7. And in case you don't know how the NBA works, these matter because if you don't win, your season's over, and you might want to take a little bit of pride in that. And this is just another Game 7, and we know what the Harden playoff resume is, where he was just a no-show. And on Twitter right away, it sparked the debate again. Dwyane Wade would never do this. Dwyane Wade would never do this. And you've got still like Rockets fans and weirdly like online Harden fans still trying to debate the Harden side of this. And I'll never understand it, David. To me, this is a non-debate. It is a non-story, and yet I keep seeing it pop up all the time.
To paraphrase the famous idiom, live by the free throw, die by the free throw. And we're noticing after years and years of evidence that Harden's style of play just doesn't translate to the playoffs when calls aren't going to go the way that you might be used to them. And this isn't in the style of Jimmy Butler, who we know can get to the line, albeit with less frequency during the playoffs than he does during the regular season. But he's just different in terms of his attacking the basket, the way he draws those fouls, the physicality with which he shows. Harden doesn't do that. Harden can create these shots. The rip-through move isn't going to get the same level of respect that it does in the regular season when maybe they allow less physicality. During the playoffs, when that level is ratcheted up, well, Harden's productivity goes down. And that makes him much easier to defend and makes him perhaps even one-dimensional. Like, as great a passer as he is and certainly a better shooter, I just think that when you watch him play, it's a version of himself that he's not accustomed to being because he's not used to getting those calls. And then he gets into his own head and he just, as you said, he does not rise to the challenge. And that's, I think, what separates him the most, is that when Dwyane was on the line or in a big game situation, you knew you were going to get a great performance from him. Whether he was playing alongside Shaquille O'Neal, whether he was playing alongside, LeBron James or Chris Bosh or whatever iteration of him, or carrying the team by himself, as he did in the 2006 NBA Finals, really. it was you were almost guaranteed that you were going to get a really, really great Dwyane performance because he understood the stakes and he was so intent on carving out a legacy that was built on winning at the highest level, not just putting up big numbers during the regular season as James does.
Yeah, Dwyane Wade got to the line a lot. And Dallas Mavericks fans will complain about the whistle Dwyane Wade got called. But to your point,
got their own problems down.
Right, but Wade got foul calls the way that Russell Westbrook gets them. Nobody would accuse Russell Westbrook of being a flopper, I don't think. It's not to say he doesn't embellish every once in a while, but he's not a flopper. He's so ferocious and so intentional about getting to the basket and single-minded about getting there that he's just going to draw contact, and he looks for the contact. Westbrook loves the contact. He doesn't shy away from it. Jimmy Butler was another good example of that. Like they're looking to play like a bowling ball, slamming against bowling pins. And that was the way Dwyane Wade was. I mean, people were having the conversation of, can he play like this for his whole career? Because people were a little worried about it. Nobody wondered, can James Harden flop his whole career? Because that seems pretty grueling on the body. And they're like, yeah, he could pretty much do that his whole career. But everything that Harden did felt like a loophole. Whether it was the throwing the head back or inventing that, I don't know if he invented it, but he really perfected it of using the ball as a barrier within like 10 feet, 8 feet of the basket, where he puts the ball into the defender's chest and draws the foul that way, because then the defender has no choice but to kind of swipe down at the arm to get the ball out of his chest. And he gets fouls like that, not to mention the throwing the head back, and then the step back three that revolutionized the game in a lot of ways. And that Houston Rockets Harden offense and Daryl Morey and all that stuff really did revolutionize the game. Now, we could just have the whole other debate on whether or not it's good or bad for the league that revolution happened. But Harden was sort of the face of that, him and Steph to a different degree. But with Steph, it always felt earned. Oh my God, this guy's the greatest three-point shooter ever. Why wouldn't he keep taking threes? With Harden, a very good three-point shooter, not to a Steph level. Nobody would argue that. And everything felt like a loophole with him. He's like, oh, this sidestep three, it's not technically a travel. Like the step back three-pointer. And it's like, okay, I guess, but it kind of sucks. Like, does anybody enjoy watching this? So there's an aesthetic argument here too, and with Dwyane Wade, everything just always felt earned. And here's the other part of this, and why I think this is such a non-debate. The only people on the planet who take James Harden's side in this debate is James Harden fans. Nobody else is like, yeah, Harden was better than Dwyane Wade. You can maybe say, hey, it's pretty close or whatever. The only reason this debate exists is because it's perpetuated by Harden fans. And when you just that's it to me. It's remove the bias out of it. Nobody else on the planet would make this a debate if it wasn't for Harden having this crazy group of stands.
I'm gonna try and play devil's advocate through this.
Oh, I wanted to do that too. Let's do it. All right, let's do the devil's advocate part. All right, give me the Harden argument.
Okay. He is a great basketball player. Aesthetically, personally, I'm not a fan of his style of play, but he is a sensational player, and the shooting numbers certainly bear that up. The way he revolutionized the game or impacted the revolution or changes of the game certainly, I think, should be taken into consideration. He's had a more durable career in many ways. He's entering season 16 right now, and he's as good as ever versus Dwyane being less than himself by the time he retired.
Big feather in the Harden cap, but durability is huge. Yep.
He's made 16 trips to the playoffs versus just 13 for Dwyane. And obviously he's not responsible for making the playoffs single-handedly. And Harden played on a lot of good teams, but there's no denying that he's been an impactful player over the
16 straight.
Years. Yes.
16 straight years. Harden is a floor raiser. And he is maybe one of the great floor raisers of his generation. His teams just make the playoffs.
Yeah.
They do. He also averaged 33.7 points per game across 3 seasons. Those Rockets years. That's bananas, dude. Like 34 points per game across 3 seasons. He won a regular season MVP, something Wade never did. Finished second 3 times. Wade never did that. Wade only has one 30-point season, and the highest MVP finish he ever had was 3rd. So in terms of the regular season stuff, James Harden has the accolades over Dwyane Wade. He was also, and I don't know if you would consider this an accomplishment, but I do. He was the closest player to knock off the Warriors during their apex in those 2018 Western Conference Finals. I count that as an accomplishment. Wade never came close to knocking off a juggernaut like those Warriors teams. He never really got the chance. You could argue those two, the 2013 Spurs, they still felt like not quite those 2018 Warriors, even though that 2013 Spurs team was awesome. But he never really had to go against an all-time great team. You could argue that the best team he ever went up against was the 2014 Spurs, and we remember how that ended for a lot of different reasons. So
and he had a lot of help in that regard too. Dwyane did.
Yep, he did. I'll even give Harden, and you mentioned this already, but I'll give him the edge as a passer playmaker. I mean, there was a point before Jokic where it was basically him and LeBron, maybe Chris Paul at that point still, as the best passers in the league.
That's fair.
Yeah, I don't think Wade ever got to that level as a passer.
No, a solid passer, nifty playmaker certainly, but I don't think he was never quite empowered to be the fulcrum of the offense the way Harden has been.
Right.
It's like it's a strange conversation too, though, because you look at them and they're completely different styles of play, and you look at the regular season resume, and it certainly tilts towards Harden, and maybe that's the strength of these Rockets fans or Harden fan arguments. But you look at the total breadth of Dwyane's career, and it's just so much more than that. And we kind of apply the same discussion where we're talking about a current player in Bam Adebayo, a guy who just makes things better for their respective teams because they do lots of other things. Nobody would put Harden in the same category as Dwyane Wade when it comes to their defensive impact. In that sense, I think Dwyane was certainly by and far a better player. I think that's.
I was trying to think of a comparison because there's a lot of Harden fans who are trend probably a little bit younger, right? Maybe they don't care about defense, but if they don't remember prime Dwyane Wade defensively, I don't blame them if they're too young to not remember that stuff. But I'm trying to think of the comparison. It's Victor Wembanyama to Thomas Bryant defensively. That's the gulf. Like, it's not close. Like, I'm trying to put it in the parlance of it's Lou Dort defensively versus Trae Young. I mean, that's the difference between Dwyane Wade in his prime and James Harden defensively. Dwyane Wade is the greatest shot blocking guard of all time. Right? No
Under
question.
6'4".
The
6'4"
steals
or under.
Right, 6'4" and under, whatever. The steals speak for themselves. Game-changing defensive plays. James Harden has 0 game-changing defensive plays in his entire career. Dwyane Wade had several. Like, it was part of the Dwyane Wade experience, right? He was this ultimate two-way player. There was a point, and here's the other argument that I love. 3 years into Dwyane Wade's career, people were comparing him to Michael Jordan. James Harden has never been compared to Michael Jordan. He's never come close to that. So there's like little things here and there. And the one thing I will say, and to kind of tie the knot on the Rockets part of this, and then we'll take a little bit of a break here and then get to some of the particulars on the resume here. But I do think that it's still maybe 80, 90% Rockets fans, like legit Rockets fans who root for the laundry, defending James Harden even still, despite the fact that Harden hasn't played there in a long time. Because I think they want the Harden years to mean something because they never got the championship. And some of those Rockets teams deserved, it felt like they were good enough to win championships, but they just ran into that juggernaut. Now, Harden's playoff failures may have always hindered them, even against a Durant-less Warriors team, potentially, but I think Rockets fans just want those years to mean something, and it's why they so fervently defend Harden in this non-debate.
It's a good point. And I wonder whether or not Heat fans will look at the Jimmy Butler era in the same way. Like, maybe does Jimmy Butler continue to climb up the standings in terms of all-time greatness, or even within the context of the franchise? Like, how does he rank in terms of, the top players that ever play for this team? Because he was so good during his stint here, and it ended quickly and shortly and without a title. At the same time, you look at what Harden was able to accomplish and had great, historically productive seasons when he was with that team, and MVP, etc. But it didn't translate into the ultimate goal of a championship. But that's such a typical conversation. One maybe we should save for after this break.
All right, we'll do it. We'll get into that and get to the particulars of the resume after this.
Today's episode is brought to you by BetterHelp. The world has made a lot of progress when it comes to mental health, but there's still a long way to go. Too many people still avoid therapy because they're afraid of being judged. But the truth is, taking care of your mental health should be just as normal as going to the gym or eating healthy. This Mental Health Awareness Month, let's normalize getting help and encourage everyone to prioritize their well-being. Because when people feel supported, families, workplaces, and entire communities are better for it. It's not just about dealing with big problems. It's about maintaining your mental wellness, just like you do with your physical health. And with BetterHelp, getting started is easier than ever. It's fully online, has a network of over 30,000 licensed therapists, and you can switch therapists anytime at no extra cost. You can even easily switch therapists anytime. Again, no extra cost. We're all better with help. So visit betterhelp.com/LockedOnNBA to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/LockedOnNBA. We'll be right back.
All right, so that was the Harden case. as good as we can. Believe it or not, we were trying to make the case for James Harden there.
Well,
let's
something I was talking about beforehand. Like Dwyane played on historically great teams, and certainly teams that were far superior in terms of his supporting cast, or even during the Big Three era, you could make the strong argument that he was the second best player to LeBron James, who won 2 MVPs during his stint here. So, how much of that should be held against Dwyane or held in favor of, say, Harden, if you're making that argument?
Well, that's the main case that Harden fans have. And it sounds a lot like the Paul Pierce case, by the way. That, hey, if James Harden or Paul Pierce played with Dwyane Wade's teams, they would also have 3 championships. And I just find that patently ridiculous for a few different reasons. First of all, quick side swipe on Paul Pierce. You played with Kevin Garnett, Ray Allen, Rajon Rondo. That was a great basketball team. You won 1 championship with that group. That's your fault, dude. Like, get out of here with that. And again, Celtics fans are the only ones that are pushing Paul Pierce versus Dwyane Wade. Dwyane Wade remains and is, to me, and this is probably my bias coming out, but the most underrated superstar of our time, because it felt like there was I don't know how many people were paying attention to Dwyane Wade, which is crazy because he was so freaking good and literally won a championship before the Big Three era. It felt like there's a generational gap right there, even in just terms of the way that the NBA is played. And then you've got the right around 2014, the Steph Curry generation, break the game, the whole thing. And at that point, Wade was a shell of himself. And I think a lot of people still remember Wade during those years versus what Wade was at his apex for about half a decade, which there was a legitimate argument for a couple of years, though, there, LeBron or Dwyane Wade.
Yeah.
Best player in the league. It was the original Durant versus LeBron. It was, everybody kind of knew it was LeBron anyway, but it was a worthwhile debate to have.
It's an interesting argument because you look at what Harden did when he left Oklahoma City, and obviously he was the 3rd best player on those Thunder teams before he went and joined the Rockets. And then when he was there, some success, but not translation into any kind of actual championship. And he's gone from team to team, and he's just never really been able to make the same kind of impact while he's putting up some solid big numbers here and there. But like Dwyane could have had that career. He could have followed the same steps as Paul Pierce or James Harden. The truth is, this is more reflective of the Heat front office being able to get the help that Dwyane needed in order for him to maximize his abilities and have it actually translate into something tangible, a championship. Because after his rookie season, in which he showed flashes of brilliance, Pat recognized, you know what? We've got a 1A here. We can surround him with somebody that is going to help him and help us win a championship. And that's when they acquired Shaquille O'Neal. So it's not Dwyane's fault that he didn't put up a lot of empty calories the way Pierce and Harden have, because their front office was not as, or their front offices were respectively not as accomplished or successful as Riley in the Miami front office.
I'll even push back on the fact that Harden never even had as good of a supporting cast. Like, are we sure about that? You mentioned Dwyane Wade had he had Shaq in 2006, Shaq in 2005 on MVP ballots. Awesome player still. By the first half of 2006, still very good. By the NBA Finals, Shaq was not Shaq anymore. And, you know, there's an argument out there that Alonzo Mourning outplayed Shaq in those finals. I think that's probably going a little bit too far. But the fact that we're even having that discussion tells you everything that we need to know. Like, Shaq by the 2006 finals was not that player. And Dwyane Wade was. And, look, by the end of this, the ultimate thing will be Dwyane Wade has the 2006 Finals MVP and championship and coming back from that series and beating Dallas. That is something James Harden just does not have. And if we don't count the resume and if we don't count all that stuff, if you're telling me that we can't count the Finals MVP, then I don't care about your regular season MVPs for James Harden's argument. Like, all of this stuff matters. And Wade just has the hardware, and James Harden doesn't. And I don't know what else to tell you about it. But if we want to do the teammate thing, let's go ahead. Let's do the teammate thing. All right. He had an elite Shaquille O'Neal for a year and a half. That's what Dwyane Wade had. And then he had elite LeBron for 4 years and elite Bosh for 4 years plus whatever.
Yeah.
5 years. Okay. Here's who James Harden had. MVP Kevin Durant in Oklahoma City. Russell Westbrook on that finals team and Serge Ibaka. If you don't even want to count Ibaka, fine, take him out. But he had Wade played with 2 MVPs with 2 LeBron MVP seasons. Harden had an MVP in Durant, and then later in his career, MVP Joel Embiid. Harden also played with 2 MVPs, so miss me with that. He played with Russell Westbrook at his prime in Oklahoma City. He played with Chris Paul near the close peak of his powers, probably the last good Chris Paul year, probably the closest analog to Dwyane Wade's Shaq year was Harden with Chris Paul. He played with Russell Westbrook again shortly after Westbrook won an MVP. He played with Durant again. He played with Kyrie, then MVP Joel Embiid. He played with Paul George. He played with Kawhi Leonard, including Kawhi this year. Wade played with a year and a half of prime Shaq, or good Shaq, LeBron for 4 years, and Chris Bosh for 5 years. You can make a real argument that Harden has had a better support, has played with better teammates than Dwyane Wade has. And if you want to tell me, by the way, James Harden would have won if he played with 2010 to 2014 LeBron James. Okay, you're probably right. He probably wins with that version of LeBron James. It's really hard not to win with that version of LeBron James. But I take you back to this. Wade won in 2006. No LeBron James.
Yeah.
Argument over. He won. That's it. I don't know what else to tell you people. That's the argument. That's it.
I'll say a couple of things. Like on the 06 finals, I mean, we did this a couple of years ago, and it was a great experience because now with less of a fan-based perspective and more about just watching the finals and everything that was just an incredible display by Wade. And we talked about it at the beginning of the finals, how it was Dwyane was an emerging star. Like he was a very good player, all-star. At the same time, he just didn't have that level of respect. They were still talking about him being part of a pretty good Heat team, a team that won in the playoffs, but hadn't won a lot during the regular season. They just kind of got hot during the playoffs, and they were still depending very heavily on Shaquille O'Neal, Gary Payton, Antoine Walker, Jason Williams, etc. Like that was a well-rounded team that was built very well to win immediately, and that's exactly what they did. They were able to win in the playoffs. But what he did during the finals, and this is where the Mavericks fans can go jump off of a bridge or whatever, because to be honest with you, like they haven't seen that game. Whatever perspective they have, they're just dead wrong, because we saw those games. Dwyane was so good at getting to the line because he was faster and stronger and better than everybody else on the floor. Nobody that the Mavericks could send at him could defend him to the point where they could try and stop him. And he was so good offensively in terms of his jump shot, his mid-range, everything he was able to do, that when he put the ball down on the floor, he was unstoppable. The only way to stop him was to foul him. So, criticize the Mavericks roster for not being able to defend him so well that they put him at the line as much as they did. But Dwyane earned every one of those free throws. And another thing that stands out to me, and that's not really talked about enough, and this really came across when I talked to Dwyane and when I saw his Hall of Fame speech in Springfield a couple of years ago, was the idea of sacrifice. And that's something that he touted. I asked him about it, and he wanted to make sure that he really emphasized that this was something that isn't included enough in the discussions of his career. Is exactly the kind of point that I was bringing up before, is how much he had to sacrifice, not just in terms of the money. The argument, again, being that he was never the most highly paid player on any of his teams is ridiculous, and yet it's true. And yet, again, as a rookie or on a rookie scale deal, the second year of his career, you have to play with one of the biggest egos and one of the biggest superstars in NBA basketball, and Shaquille O'Neal. He had to change his game to accommodate Shaq. And yeah, it certainly helped. He got the championship. But then from that point forward, then he had to sacrifice again. When the team kind of entered into a rebuilding phase after trading Shaquille O'Neal, he put up MVP-type numbers in 2008 to 2010. And what did it translate into? Nothing, because they just didn't have a very good team around it, because they were gearing up for the 2010 run at LeBron James. And then when LeBron came along, well, you have to sacrifice then too, because LeBron's style of play is so singular. He is so unique in the terms of how he defines these teams, especially at that point of his career, that to play alongside him is a major sacrifice in how you have to change your style. And we saw what happened in the NBA Finals in 2011, where Dwyane was the best player in the NBA Finals. He was the one who was putting up big numbers. LeBron was a shell of himself, and yet the Mavericks were a better team, and they were able to, unfortunately, beat Miami in that run. But after that, then Dwyane had to take a back seat through 2012 through 2014 when LeBron was on that team, and that allowed LeBron to take his game to another level and carry them to 2 more championships. But Dwyane was a big part of those runs. Like, he was essential to those championships, and that's what everybody's forgetting. And then he put up big numbers in the years following that. Like, again, the spotlight was off the Miami Heat because it was no longer LeBron's team. But you kind of forget about purple shirt guy and the Charlotte Hornets and the fact that maybe they're one win away from going to the Eastern Conference Finals, following that run, because they were that good. And Dwyane was the star of that team alongside, Hassan Whiteside early in his career. He wasn't a particularly good player. Like, they had so many good
and the playoffs, the moments. He's got the moments too, where we're going to remember the 2006 Finals as a moment for Dwyane Wade. Remember 2013 in the Game 4 against the Spurs in the 2013 Finals, 32 points on 56% shooting, 6 rebounds, 4 assists, and 6 steals. It's one of the all-time Dwyane Wade games when they were down 2-1. If Dwyane Wade does, in an okay LeBron game, if Dwyane Wade doesn't do that, Miami, there is no Ray Allen shot.
Yeah,
we don't even get that far. If not for Dwyane Wade in Game 4, one of the all-time great Dwyane Wade performances. The Harden resume is a no-show in the 2012 NBA Finals.
Yes.
The 2015 Western Conference Finals and the 2018 Western Conference Finals when he was another egg laid in the Game 7. Second round of the Western Conference playoffs in 2017 and 2019, where he was just a Game 6 against San Antonio in 2017 was he was just clanking shot after shot in that game. The 2021 Eastern Conference second round when he was part of the Sixers and they lost to the Milwaukee Bucks in another no-show. A no-show in the 2022 second round against the Heat, which we were there for.
Yes.
And then this latest game, and then the Game 7 losses. He's had Game 7 losses as a member of the Rockets, the Nets, the Sixers, and the Clippers now. Like, let me, without even pointing out all the failures, even though I just did, I'll ask any James Harden fan, what's the great James Harden playoff game? Give me one that didn't happen in a Game 1 just give me one. There isn't. There's no James Harden moment in the playoffs. And in this rings culture, it just feels like everybody is part of the rings culture except for Harden. It doesn't matter what he does because his regular season thing is so impeccable that like it doesn't matter what he does. It's absolutely crazy. It's absolutely crazy. Let's strip the context away from it. The teammates, the things, the Game 7s, whatever. Dwyane Wade averaged 22 points per game for his career on 47% shooting. James Harden, 22 points for his career in the playoffs on 42% shooting. That's better. Dwyane Wade's record in the playoffs, 105 to 72, 105 wins to 72 losses. James Harden, 90 wins to 83 losses. He's barely over 500. Dwyane Wade's career PER, 22.37 in the playoffs. Harden, 21.81. That's a pretty big difference. Dwyane Wade, the closest PER he is in the playoffs, his closest peer, Kobe Bryant. Harden's closest peer in terms of playoff PER, Elgin Baylor. Elgin Baylor is an amazing player. Nobody's telling you that James Harden isn't. Is anybody telling you that Elgin Baylor is a better all-time player than Kobe Bryant? Nobody is having that conversation. So my point is, I think this, and we've gone longer than we thought we were going to go on this.
Yes.
And I know it's two guys arguing for Dwyane Wade, and this might be a better podcast for somebody who would actually argue for James Harden. But this is the dumbest argument that is out there. And I don't think it's even a conversation. Paul Pierce versus Dwyane Wade might be dumber, but it tells you something that it's the fans of those players are the only people perpetuating that argument. And because those fans are so online, it just becomes this thing. And even the argument of James Harden did things Dwyane Wade could never do, I encourage you, just go, you're probably too young. Just go back and watch Dwyane Wade in the 2006 finals and tell me that there's anything that he does that James Harden did, or that he can't do that James Harden couldn't do. Like, it's absolutely crazy. To me, David, and this might be my polarizing bias take, I'm not saying that Dwyane Wade is greater all time than Kobe Bryant, but he is closer to Kobe than he is to James Harden on the all-time list to me. That's how crazy this argument is. There is a clear top 3 shooting guards in NBA history. It's Michael Jordan, it's Kobe, and it's Dwyane Wade. Harden is so far from that conversation to me that Dwyane Wade is closer to Kobe in terms of the all-time conversation than he is to James Harden. This should not be an argument anymore.
I think that's fair. I mean, you've got the next level is Iverson, Jerry West, and then Harden, but that's a whole other level beneath those other 3 because they
Jerry
won
West
on
might
high
be the
level.
best comp for Harden when you think about it. But Jerry West showed up big and then lost the games because he didn't have the teammates, where it was Harden.
Right. He was Mr. Clutch.
Yeah.
It's not the exact same thing. He was the only one. Like, I mean, Elgin Baylor was lost to injury and the war. Like, I mean, he was serving as in the military at that time. It's a very different era, you know. So, you know,
How many threes did they take?
Yeah. Exactly. That's the whole thing. Like, this argument might be very different, but Jerry West, like, his scoring was ridiculous without the 3-point line. If they include that in there, who knows? Maybe he's in a different category, or maybe he's seen with a different level of respect. But yeah, it's Harden is just not in the same category as Dwyane. Like, and look, I will say this to provide a little more nuance. Like, Harden can be viewed as a great player.
Yeah.
But you don't have to say he's a great player at the cost of anybody else's greatness. And that you can't take away from Dwyane's greatness just to prop up your own guy or the guy that you happen to follow or who played on the team that you happen to follow. Because that's just not how it works. Like, Dwyane was the more impactful player. And you know that by watching him, by going through the moments of his career and knowing that he was a superstar because of his defense, because of his offense, because of the playmaking, because of a combination of different things, his leadership out on the floor. He's just a greater player, and that there's nothing wrong in admitting that, and also admitting, you know, Harden is a very good player who just hasn't stepped up in those big moments, and that's why it hasn't translated into the kind of championship success that Dwyane was able to enjoy.
You know me, I was begging this Heat team to trade for Harden a couple of years ago.
You were.
I'm a little bit of a Harden apologist, but this is where I draw the line. The other big question that we could tackle is Paul Pierce or James Harden. Just kidding. That'll do it for us here on Locked On Heat.